Hello fans and welcome to another edition of the Wrestling Roundtable. I'm your host Eric Santamaria, a fan of 19 years. Last week you met my guest here to my left. That would be your right. Lawrence Haber, a fan of 21 years, joined us last week on the panel. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You saw Rodney Leconte last week. His brother Martin Leconte will be joining us here, a fan of 10 years. Someone who's kept up with our topic TNA a lot more closely than either of us, but we briefly mentioned TNA last week when we were talking about WCW and the sort of problems it faced at the end. And I know a lot of people on YouTube are very one side or the other. They're either very TNA or very anti-TNA.
Because God forbid you have more than one opinion.
It's impossible. So today we're going to talk about TNA's status in wrestling as of today in 2007, being December 2007.
People don't read F. Scott
And
Fitzgerald.
for the people that hate TNA, and I'm going to throw this to you first, what's the biggest problem as a company that TNA faces in the wrestling landscape right now?
The biggest problem is that they are not pushing the guys that they should. First of all, the biggest problem is the X Division. Look how it is, look how it was, and then look how it is. Mm-hmm. First, they were like pre-main eventing, almost they wanted to main event these guys.
Well, on a lot of pay-per-views, like when Samoa Joe was X Division champion, the X Division match went last.
Exactly.
Which was kind of TNA's way of saying, look,
We know
who the real stars are. We're just going to keep the world title on the guys we have to politically please, like Jarrett and stuff.
That pay-per-view, you know what's gonna be the original main event? Raven and Ronda. Nobody wants to see that shit after like X Division and all that. So that was a good move to do in 2005. Look what you're doing in 2007. It's like, what happened?
Hall and Nash, etc.
Yeah, Hall and Nash. They want to be to the past, okay?
Hall and Nash. Those troublemakers.
Those two
troublemakers. They might as well be writing. They might as well be
Kevin Nash
commentating the
for
show, both
president.
of them.
That might be a little counterproductive.
Okay.
But what do you think the
Here's
biggest
Samoa
problem?
John.
What do you think the biggest problem TNA has is?
That's like asking me, what's wrong with the war in Iraq? Not realizing that all they have to do is to make money and save obscene amounts of money is just use people that it's like using the rookies in sports. You got guys like Samoa Joe and AJ and I don't know, Chris Sabin or whoever. People that fans like they enjoy, not these over the hill guys. They can work, they can talk, they've got gimmicks. The fans love them, and you just push them. It's easy. It's really
Sounds a lot like what we talked about last time with WCW.
It's different. It's different because people wanted to see Sting and Luger and Hogan back then. Now they don't want. They
Not
don't
in
care.
2000.
No, not 2000. Okay, fair enough. But '98 they did when people were saying you gotta push Chris Jericho. Jericho's gotta beat Goldberg. No.
Sure, all those guys are still over.
Yeah, you needed to push those guys in addition. Now it's no. I love Kevin Nash. Actually, Kevin Nash is an exception. He could be champion. But Hall and Sting and Jarrett. Well, Jarrett's really,
He's not even there right now.
Yeah, triple J. And who are some of these other,
Dudleys.
slugs?
The Dudleys.
Anybody who worked for the WWF. And this whole VKM stuff. We gotta talk about that. You get my point. Martin, you watch it far more than me. I can't be bothered.
In 2002, they didn't use the new guys. They wanted to bring back old guys and see what they missed. Like with the first champion, Ken Shamrock. He wasn't like
that was a credibility thing.
But they did have
they pushed Raven, and then
about a year later they had a time frame where Raven was really hot. And he had the big match with Jarrett. I think it was Bloody Wednesday.
Did he win the belt or something?
No.
No?
They didn't do it when it was the time.
Yeah.
And I think the problem now is
Joe is brutal what they did.
A lot of the guys Martin mentioned that the fans like, AJ Styles, Chris Daniels, Samoa Joe, now Motor City Machine Guns. Mm-hmm. A lot of these guys, the window of opportunity was there a few years ago to put guys like Chris Daniels, AJ Styles in that main event spot.
Too late.
I'm not talking about as a heel with Russo. That bullshit didn't count.
God.
I'm talking
definitely did not count.
That's what made ECW a following in the Northeast. It had its own crop of stars.
Yeah.
And even the guys who were cast-offs like Raven and Shane Douglas, they all went through this cosmetic change too.
Yeah.
Raven,
Yeah.
you didn't know it was Scotty Polo almost.
Yeah, totally.
Franchise was a completely different person. They rejuvenated themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That's
TNA, I think, is just relying
No.
too much on these old stars.
The last
Same
person they
story.
tried to recreate and rejuvenate was Rhino. They were gonna recreate Rhino, like make him the biggest star that he should
Well,
have
2
been.
years ago, they had the opportunity.
They had the opportunity,
But
he
he
put
was
the belt
done.
on him.
He was done when
did
he got
everything
there.
on
No. 2 years ago, when he won the
He
belt,
does everything on one pay-per-view. What happens to
That was a novelty.
Everything falls
Dude,
off.
The line there of people in front of Rhino when he won the belt was ridiculous.
no, it wasn't. Who was it?
Who was Joe there at the time?
Let me set the stage.
But I'll
for
call
you.
a spade when I see a spade.
That pay-per-view opened with Joe against Liger.
Right.
Joe had just debuted. The main event was supposed to be Jarrett and Nash when Nash had one of his heart attacks again. And they felt they need to do something to make up for Nash not being there. They put Rhino over in 3 matches and he won the belt.
And he won the belt.
Exactly.
Huge deal. It got a great reaction.
It did.
The next taping on Monday
They
drops the
took it
belt.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 1 step forward, 3 steps back.
Yeah, they could have made a star there. You're right. But you know what the problem is with TNA also is the line. Every time a WF guy comes in, whether or not it's somebody that should get a push like a Booker T, they automatically
Put
are
the belt
are
on.
in. You know, they're the next heir to the throne for at least a month.
Okay.
It's funny because
Look
Christian.
at Kurt Angle. No, Kurt Angle.
Well, Kurt Angle's
That
the
was
new
big-
Jarrett. Kurt
that
Angle's-
was the biggest one because how you can have the guy have all 3 belts?
Well, they stepped on Samoa Joe. They basically said, you know what, screw it. We got Joe's never gonna win the belt there.
That's it
You'll
right
see
now.
him on Raw within a year tops. You know, He'll come
within
back
a
when
year,
Cena's
top 4
back.
getting squashed.
Once they bring Cena back and turn him and
What I find
crystal ball.
What I find most offensive about TNA's television product, and I'm not one of these people that's going to lump it all on Russo's shoulders. I know it's
No,
not
of
all
course
his fault.
not. It's politics.
What bothers me about it the most
Ego.
is that a lot of these guys are people left over from the WCW sort of era, like Terry Taylor and Jarrett and Dutch Mantell, and they're repeating the exact same mistakes.
Oh,
Only with lesser guys, with Jarrett instead of Hogan and Flair.
Sure, I mean,
you know?
every time they wanted to bring in.
I mean, what
Albert
is Jeff
recently.
Jarrett? honestly?
exactly.
They brought in fucking Rikishi. Who cares?
Yeah, why? Why waste
Okay.
money on that?
No.
You
They
know?
wanted, okay, maybe to have like a little thing.
But then why? But why do you need to do that? Joe should be winning the belt. He shouldn't be doing a novelty tag team with Rikishi.
Why make
You
a
know?
T-shirt for Tomko and bring?
No,
Albert
you know
and
what
these
though?
sort of
But
guys?
you know,
They
like
wanna make
certain
the start-
people, you might strike gold with you don't realize. Like Tomko has potential. I think we've seen it more now than we did at WF. But they didn't bring him in for that reason. They brought him in because he's the WF guy. You know, Christian. With Christian, everyone thought it was the right thing to do to bring him in. He's
turned out to be-
terrible. The guy's terrible. He's a mid Carter at best.
Talented now,
Oh,
good.
yeah,
They're
he's not
making him a
talented
mid
enough.
Good thing nobody gives a shit if.
Well, you know
But
what?
even Booker T, why? I mean, I love
No.
Booker.
Booker T,
Why?
okay,
Because we
okay.
like him. They don't need him either. Joe, AJ, and people for them to beat.
AJ
you know?
Sandman. But the thing, you know what
They had,
disappointed me?
didn't they
The
have
thing
Daniels?
disappointed me.
Huh?
The thing that disappointed me, how they pushed
LAX. LAX. It's ridiculous. You made something here, and then no.
Squash it, but because
We
that's
got,
why
we got the
Conan-
New Age
that's why
Outlaws and the
Conan-
Dudleys and the Steiners. Come on, I like a lot of these
Please.
guys, but
Well, let's look at
The
it this
point,
way.
why?
When The Rock came back in 2003 with that great heel run,
Yeah.
and he got the new entrance and new look and all this time and everything.
It was
I thought,
incredible.
It was great, and I love The Rock. But
Matches
I
are
thought,
terrible.
why don't they take half that amount of effort and time and thought and put it into somebody new? In the same token,
sometimes it's the talent.
at
man.
the same time, when like Rikishi,
You got to
came
have
in,
a guy that can pick the ball up and do that. A lot
Well,
of rock. Yeah.
there's one in Samoa Joe.
Oh, well,
when they're bringing in Rikishi, I'm thinking, what kind of waste is this?
Yeah.
It's, and I've said this before to you guys in private. It's a fucking shame and a farce and embarrassment that Samoa Joe is not the biggest name in professional wrestling.
It's not.
But we're going to talk about that more when we come back from our
Hell
break.
yeah.
So stay tuned for more talk about TNA.
Be right back.
TNA.
What a mess.
It really is a joke.
It is.
Total nonstop action.
TNA. Total Nonstop Action.
That guy is awesome.
Does it
That-
have a chance of surviving another 5 years?
No.
No?
No, I don't think so.
To their credit, people have been saying that since day one. Now, they haven't made a dime since day one, and if
Yeah.
Panda Energy hadn't come in, they probably would have gone the way of the dinosaur a while ago. But do you see them having a viable future?
With the way they're going, as long as they got TV, if there's advertisers that, even if they're not making money, as long as advertisers in the network are like, this is a show we can have on our network that'll, I mean, stupider things stay on TV.
Well, here.
What's that? The ridiculous show. Great example is the other show that the show with the Japanese show that they turned into Extreme Challenge. They changed it. It's still on the air. It probably gets a point.
Here's a surrogate pie graph of the ratings for TNA. If this was a line graph,
a surrogate pie graph.
This is exactly what they'd be doing. You know, they've done a 1.1 for about 2 months.
Remember, ratings in wrestling mattered when it was WCW versus WF.
No, it still matters to them now. It's very important.
If they're doing better than putting a rerun of a CSI or whatever on that network, they're going to keep the show. They're going to be around as long as the network, as long as they have TV. Once they go back to being a pay-per-view thing, you know, once a week sort of deal, of course they'll be gone. What's the broad's name? Dixie Carter, who runs
She's actually kind of hot.
Yeah, she is. That's okay.
Well,
that doesn't do anything.
Business. To me, that's a rule.
Like, if they don't have TV, well, no one's gonna care. If out of sight, out of mind, then, you know, then that's the end. But as long as they got TV, they'll be there, man.
But don't you think that,
said it last
like
episode.
when they brought in Kurt Angle, that they didn't spike like they did when they brought in Sting? That's a huge disappointment.
I think they completely ruined Kurt Angle. First of all, okay, that's good having him come with a big thing. Like at the end of the pay-per-view, you saw the debut of Kurt Angle. I saw that pay-per-view, my mouth dropped.
Right.
But when I saw him first facing off with Joe, why Joe first? Why couldn't it be somebody like a good X Division guy or somebody like that?
Because it's like giving a kid a handgun. You know, what do you expect? They're gonna shoot something, you know?
But not the biggest one right now. I can't even watch Kurt Angle fight Samoa Joe because now I know, oh great. Now
but why, for instance, now can't Dixie Carter and the team show the same kind of patience that Eric Bischoff did?
They don't know wrestling. They know nothing about wrestling. You gotta know.
They know nothing about it, please.
They're like, okay, this guy is, the people like him, Samoa Joe. This guy, Kurt Angle, he's cool too.
They have plenty of people who've worked in wrestling forever.
And a lot of those people have agendas, and a lot of those people are, you know, may speak up, but we'll get.
No, the thing is, they're not smart in wrestling. They don't. I don't think they even look at old stuff anymore. If they push,
and Kurt Angle may have demanded it.
If they pushed Angle and Joe the way they did Sting and Hogan, you know it was gonna be crazy.
No, because TNA is a small pond. The only way, here's a better question. Not are they going to be here in 5 years, is are they going to be able to become something relevant in the wrestling world, not just, you know, people on the internet saying,
well, will
TNA was good. No, absolutely not. No
Unless you have a big name from TNA.
They got to do house shows. They got to get out of that ridiculous studio. That is the most embarrassing Bush League thing. The Impact, come on, like, eat a video game. They showed a video game club, I was like dying. I mean, it looked absurd. It looked like we're back to we're back to the Sportatorium. You know, it's like you can't have your own arena. What is this? American Gladiators or Battle Dome? You gotta be national. You have to be like coming to your town soon. They don't have the UFC Extreme Zone. You can't have your own arena. It's like something out of a bad, you know.
Well, what should TNA be doing to, in a potential non-idiotic world? What should they be doing to get back on track to elevate themselves out of Universal?
Give Joe the belt one. Just give it to him. Just give it to him. Even though no matter how late it is, you give the guy the belt. Just give it to him. Do the right thing. Push more new guys. Okay. Yeah. Nobody wants to. I mean, no offense to Hall and Nash, but nobody wants to see them 10 years later with gray hair. Nobody wants to see Nash with gray hair be a champion and wrestle. I think he even knows that.
Do you think it's too late for Joe? Or was his time a year and a half earlier than now?
I think his time was a year and a half.
In TNA it is, but not in the WWE.
Well, maybe not even a year and a half.
In WWE
This year, when he was fighting Christian. Remember, he challenged Christian?
Well, that was it. That was the opportunity.
Match.
They could have made a statement right there. We don't care about this new WF guy. This guy's got to win the belt. We have to do. It's like Goldberg Hogan. No, we don't care what your agenda is. We got to put the belt on this guy. You know.
That was the time.
That was it for them.
The thing is, you could tell that they could put this thing. The first thing they could do in 2008 is put the belt on Joe. Just the way things are going right now.
Not bother re-signing Sting and all this other stuff.
Exactly. Come on, Sting.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares about Sting.
It doesn't matter for attendance. They run out of a studio. People, it's like a ride.
Okay. They'll probably do Joe and Booker T.
It's like teacups or wrestling.
Booker T. He shouldn't even be this.
Like,
I'm surprised.
If they took Booker T. Christian off the card, who would even care?
I'm surprised they didn't put Booker T. and Team Pac-Man. You know?
Just because he's black, right?
Exactly. And that has a stereotype. Please. That's why Monty
We're gonna
Brown.
go there.
That's how Monty Brown left the bit. Monty Brown, he's an example too.
Oh my God.
Another
Monty-
big guy that they missed.
For everybody
Monty
missed out on this
Brown.
guy. Oh my God.
Well, not
More
to
potential than anyone in wrestling.
lest the
You
internet
messed him up in
think,
WWF even worse.
lest the
What
internet
was his
think that
name?
we're completely
Marcellus
negative.
Wallace or something?
What are some positive things about TNA?
Okay, TNA, no restrictions. Do any move and any time.
But what purpose does letting the
It's
wrestlers have awesome matches serve if they don't capitalize on that? I mean, they can. Then they have been for years. They've been tearing it up. They've had great X Division matches and Joe and
But the
that
thing
sort
is,
of stuff. But
those matches shouldn't be first in the pay-per-view. Just to get the hype.
That's what
and then-
WCW did, though.
But okay, with
They
all
had
the
the
cruiserweights
Luchas
and everything.
and then the end, right,
But
they-
all the big names in the X division.
Yeah, but the big names matter. The big names don't matter now.
What's
the
a-
fans don't care about Kurt Angle or
what's a
Nash.
positive thing about
Exactly.
TNA?
People want to.
It's not the W. It's an alternative. That's the best I can say about it.
Okay,
Is
so
it
not
really
anymore.
though?
They have done one
It's
good thing.
WWF Light. You know what it is? It's you can click on your TV without spending $1 and see AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and these sorts of guys. And some people that you liked when you were
I'm
a
gonna
kid.
quote my associate Jimmy. WWF has 5 hours of TV a week, 6 if you count TNA.
Now you know I
Really,
think
there's
TNA's full
nothing-
of
There's nothing at all.
former WCW people who can't go anywhere and WWE rejects. That's basically TNA.
It does more harm to the business than good. They have the perfect opportunity to give us an alternative. And, they
And then
choose
all the
not
X
to.
division, of course they all want to
You know,
leave.
that's a
How many
worse
people
crime.
you know that are in TNA that are trying
At
to
least
get
the
fired?
WWF has the balls to be itself.
Yeah.
Hey, even WCW, yeah, they tried copying WWF when Russo came in. It was horrible. But at least they were WCW when they were WCW. There was a time when they wanted to be the anti-WWF, and the executives sat down
That's
and
what
said,
WWF
"We're not going to do any.
should be
We're not going to
doing."
do any TNA in WCW." And you have to admire that.
But the thing is, it's not signing just any WWE asshole. It's signing the right guy. Let's just say if tomorrow, if Shelton Benjamin was to leave and go to TNA, they would make him a lot bigger. Yes, they
It wouldn't
would.
matter.
Yes,
doesn't
it would.
matter.
Elix
I think
Skipper
it
could have
would.
been in that spot, but he's
Yeah,
not.
Skipper could have been in
Yeah, but
tell
nobody
you-
saw Elix Skipper in WCW. People look at Shelton Benjamin and they say, "Yeah,
I'll-
he's great," but
I'll tell you one positive thing about TNA. Kevin Nash, Paparazzi Productions.
oh,
Yes.
that was the best
Yes.
thing of the whole year in wrestling.
Get
That's
your
where-
head out of
that's
your
where,
ass. Laugh
friggin-
at it.
Yes,
Enjoy.
come on. Everyone's like, Kevin Nash shouldn't be. If you like Black Machismo, if you think that's even funny, that's where the whole thing came from. An inside joke for Kevin Nash. That's one thing Jay Lethal.
And he
If
actually
they
beats Kurt
if
Angle
they
clean
run with that,
at that position.
Jay
He beats
Lethal
Kurt Angle clean.
could be what happened with Goldust in 2002. You know, they
That
got
could've
Goldust
been-
so over then.
P. Williams. He could have been a Canadian Kurt Angle.
Come on,
He could have been, the
Petey.
move he has, the potential he has. And
Petey.
everything. Okay, despite the name is Petey, look how he wrestles.
Peter.
And look, just a signature move would be like, oh my god.
We'll talk about Petey Williams some more.
You can't polish it.
Actually, we won't. We're going to move on to something else when we get back from our commercial break. Thank you. We don't have commercials. Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable, and we were just talking about TNA. Ha ha, funny name.
Fuck the TNA.
And we were
TNA, fag, little gay.
we were relating it to
He did the knee
if TNA
thing.
is going to rise to the next level as opposed to being a flat line like it is now, the plateau of the ratings. And that brings us to our next topic.
Put him in a camel club.
Can the Monday Night Wars ever be recreated? Do you think we're ever going to see that in our lifetime?
Hell no. The Monday Night Wars was every wrestling fan's, I wouldn't even say dream, but it was a treat. It was a treat to be a wrestling fan.
Would you
at
say
that
it was a
time.
golden era?
Yeah, it's an era that you cannot recreate. Because
5 hours of TV every Monday.
yeah,
Live.
that is an era that if you weren't a wrestling fan, you became a wrestling fan. You know,
Yeah.
with Austin and NWO and, you know, the rise of all these stars.
If you got out of wrestling, you got back into it.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how many times I
Dude,
hear
there
the
was
same
girls in
story.
high school that had like rock shirts
Austin
and stuff. DX
Every
shirts.
girl knew Austin.
I hear the
Rock.
same story over and over.
Yeah.
I watched wrestling when I was a kid. Our age group, the Hogan
The Monday
type
Night Wars
era,
are the greatest
got out of
wrestling
it,
era.
back into it with the
Yeah.
Monday Night War era.
It's probably the greatest wrestling era that will ever happen.
Do you think it'll ever be recreated?
Ever.
No,
Ever.
but I don't think it doesn't mean another company will not be able to compete with the WWF. I just think it'll be in a different
Far
way.
down the line because
It's possible.
WCW
Could be
had
tomorrow.
its own
Anything
rich
can happen.
history with its own stars.
That's not why people were into it. People were into
No,
it
but
because the
because-
NWO was a hot thing.
Oh, because NWO, but it was already separated
It was the
itself as a
NWA.
different company.
Yeah,
So, you know, it was always WCW, WWF.
Yeah,
and then they
okay.
finally do something where it's on a grand scale.
I'm not saying that there's going to be a black and white thing where you choose one side, but I think somebody could come along and get their shit right and eventually get to a level of WF, and then after a while people say,
It's
because people
possible.
always have this ridiculous tendency to think
possible.
you have to be this or that. But I think if not TNA, but something
You
that
have to
had
have the
TV
right
time
person.
like
You have to have
that,
the right person.
you know,
Someone who is
and did
ruthless as
something.
Eric Bischoff.
Yeah,
Who
who's
really-
like-
someone who is determined to put Vince McMahon out of business.
I'll say this
Yeah.
about what you brought up about it always being WCW, WWF, and then eventually grew into the Monday Night
And
Wars.
then WCW just
Which started
Went
because
right off.
NWO, WCW was really WWF, WCW in people's minds' eye.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But why can't that be recreated, not now, but down the line with TNA?
No
Because
way.
look at it this way.
Yeah.
Look at it this way.
Okay.
Like you said, it was always WWF, WCW. So WCW always had like that second banana appeal to it in the mainstream level before it jumped ahead of WWF in 95, 96. But TNA's been around 5 years.
Yeah.
They've already made it clearly known that their dream is to be on Monday night against Raw. Why can't that happen down
Because
the line?
TNA, people look at it as a little engine that could. With WCW, they still had,
They were Flair and
they
Harley
Flair
and the
Sting.
big gold
They still
belt.
had,
Come on.
But
a
still.
year before Nitro, they were in the same building with Hogan and Beefcake and
They
those
had that
losers.
history.
Yeah, but they were
counts for
all right.
something.
When you look at it's all about the look too. WCW had the right people behind it.
Okay.
The TNA is the exact
Can I say
opposite.
this?
When you look, hold on a second. When you look at TNA, you're looking at like you said before. These guys in a TV studio, you cannot take it seriously. When you see Monday Night Raw in Madison Square Garden, why would you flip to that? I mean, no matter who they get, as long as they have that kind of presentation, it will never compete.
Any complaint we had in the previous couple segments, if they fix that, granted, I don't believe, like you said, they have anyone as ruthless as Bischoff, but suppose they did. If they make those sort of improvements, why couldn't they reach that level?
They have too much of a raw mentality. WCW had a mind of its own.
They're
They
trying
were-
to be too much like WWF.
Exactly, and that's why WCW didn't work, because
It's
they
like
tried
the
to make
Yankee
a Booker
farm
T
team.
their
You're
Raw.
like, we're going to be the next Yankees. And play the Yankees.
Publicly.
Can't be the Yankees.
Publicly,
They're the only
publicly
one.
on like their specials, they'll say, this is what makes us different, this is what sets us apart. But then they'll
But
bring
then
in...
they'll put the belt on Christian in like
Right.
a month. And then
Well,
they'll give Angle every belt.
I have an even
And I love
deeper
Angle,
reason
but-
for it. WCW is the NWA. I don't care what anybody says. That was a correlation people made when they saw Flair. Every time he would
Sure.
talk about Dusty Rhodes, woo,
Steiner,
Harley
Harley Race,
Sting.
Briscoe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There was a north-south, east-west mentality that fans had when I was growing up. I had on my wall the Hogan, and then I had the Road Warriors. And like Hogan was different because he was such a big star that you just kind of put him in a separate thing. But when you talked about like Demolition, if you watched the NWA, you said they're Road Warriors ripoffs. Road Warriors are a real deal. When you saw Ric Flair, he represented this other company that was like hipper, and you had the Horsemen, and you had all these quirky things. Not going out saying we're better than WWF, but subtly saying things like Dusty would come out and be like, "This is not, this Hollywood wrestling." They never said we're going to compete with the WWF like TNA does.
Yeah.
We're the boys down south, and we don't give a shit about what they're
we
doing.
got the names,
And when they
yeah.
finally got the big
Nitro.
rooms, the big rooms,
The big arenas,
the big
the
arenas,
crowds.
and they started getting WWF stars. It was like, now.
Shit's on.
They're coming. It's
Nitro-
on. And a
Nitro
lot of
had energy
people
from
said,
beginning to
"Well,
end."
I'm gonna side with them," like I did, because to me it was like I always knew the Road Warriors were cooler than Demolition. I mean, I'm not knocking anybody, but I'm just saying it was when you took sides as a kid and as an adult. It's like just the same reason why people root for the bad guy in wrestling. It was the alternative. It's going against the grain.
Yeah.
Here's the New York company. Here's the guys on the Turner channel. ECW could have actually had a better chance than TNA did.
Well,
too.
if not TNA, who do you think could step up to the plate? Would it be someone completely out of left field? Someone who maybe doesn't exist?
we count
yet?
you don't count UFC because it's not wrestling. Maybe
Yeah.
Yeah, no. People, I think, try to watch TNA because they think maybe a few years down the line it will start to compete, just so they can say, "Oh, well, I've been watching it since 2006 and yada yada
The
yada."
NWA goes
But
back,
and
I mean-
I don't see any other wrestling company
No, not
right now.
Why is that?
that
like-
history thing.
No other wrestling company has a TV deal or like a huge following that could potentially.
You have to either say, we are all about history like the NWA did, and the WF can't touch our history, or be like ECW and say, screw history. We are going to be the new thing and watch us. TNA wants it both ways. They want to be, initially they wanted to be associated with the NWA, and now they want to be associated with the WF by proxy of bringing in all these WF guys and having like Road Dogg and Billy Gunn be like, screw the WF. Come on, you got to be yourself. For better or worse, and people will like you. It's like anything
version.
else.
They're just an old. When guys come in, you know, with Booker, they have the same look. They're doing the same moves, practically having the same matches. So what's the difference?
They are.
Why am I changing the channel?
Exactly.
Why am I changing the channel? I'd rather, see Flair cut a promo on Raw.
I'd rather see Booker T on Raw.
I think a big problem TNA faces is not a lot of people know it exists.
Oh.
And your brother, who was on before, really demonstrated to me an important lesson in the importance of television, because when WSX debuted on MTV, all of a sudden Martin was saying to me, this guy Ruckus was great, Human Tornado, all these indie guys that I knew about, but Martin had never heard of before.
WSX was closer to being able to have a Monday Night War than TNA will ever be. Because it was so out of the blue. It was so different and so bizarre, it could catch on. So just like people watch the weirdest shows on TV, like people watch the Tila Tequila show now.
Oh yeah.
You know? Okay, what the hell is that? Because people, it's a niche thing. Like, somebody puts it on and they're like, okay, they tell 50 people. If WSX could have generated that because it was so ridiculous. TNA can't do that because it's not. It's just there.
I have no idea who the hell Tila Tequila is, but during the break they're going to fill me in, so
you would
stay tight and we'll see you
What's
after the
the
break.
problem? Fuck the Tila Tequila.
Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. You mentioned something about like a north-south pick side sort of thing.
Yeah.
If the
kind of like the United States.
If the Monday Night War was ever recreated, do you see region playing a factor in it?
Not in the States. If there's some sort of international thing that catches on, it could be like America, because now everything's America versus the rest of the world. No freedom fries and that sort of stuff. So if you could get something going that's like just so drastically different in every way.
But looking at what we lived through during the actual Monday
liberal
Night War,
championship wrestling,
region was a factor.
Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah.
Because there was still territories. Those were just now the territories.
Now there are no territories.
Texas, Von Erichs, and the Grahams, Florida, McMahon in New York. It was now okay. Here's the line. Basically, WF's got Philly, this New York City, Boston, and then NWA's got all the small southern cities, Charlotte and Roanoke.
Where we grew up in the tri-state area, it was very much WWF. WWF number one.
For the marks.
We were in but
a lot of people grew up like my father and my godfather grew up in Brooklyn, and they would get to see Florida Championship Wrestling, and there was a pretty big following of it from people in their neighborhood. More so than WF, because it wasn't lame. People they hated like Pedro Morales. They hated guys like that.
But in their time, it wasn't so much us versus them. It was like they didn't even really acknowledge anyone outside of like, here's the NWA champions.
Hogan actually did that.
It was kind of When we grew up, we were indoctrinated with propaganda. WWF is number one. WWF is number one.
Yeah.
We became loyal.
Of course, they had the gold logo with the lightning.
Right.
That's what we know. That's what mainstream knew.
Smart.
That's what mainstream
That's how you do it, man.
Well, it works.
Make a corporation.
That's what mainstream. That's what
Nike, man. That's the
almost
swoosh.
anybody our age.
That's the golden arches.
Everyone was a wrestling fan when they were little.
You got the swoosh, the golden arches, and the WF logo. That's.
I know it's a corporation.
It wasn't like that in the 70s.
But a lot of people never broke that. We know people who are still like, if it's not WWF, I'm not watching it.
Which is absurd,
Of course
it's like being like, if it's not the Beatles,
it's blindly loyal. But being blindly loyal is still blind.
No.
The only thing that might have made a little interjection was maybe ECW, because that was also a Northeast sort of thing. We watched it on MSG Network.
Oh, but most, no, not at all. Most of the ECW guys, the smart ones, they would show up at WWF shows and they hated WCW. They hated Bischoff, but there wasn't the same sort of venom towards Bischoff as McMahon.
No,
if you watched ECW, then man, you would see, like, anytime they were in Philly, WWF, there'd be a ton of ECW fans there, and they'd be marking out for the same stuff. During the Attitude Era, it was like, we all hate WCW, we all agree on that. You'd see all those goofballs that jerk off with the Hawaiian shirt and the guy with the beard, all those freaks, it being at like Survivor Series.
It was kind of the same, yeah. It was like,
and all due respect to them.
Well, a lot
They
of
kind of saw some elements of ECW in
All due
WWF. I
respect.
think that's why.
But a lot of the wrestlers, and I would enjoy, like, probably Cactus Jack, when they would get in the ECW arena with all their loyal followers and say, you're just going to watch me on Monday night anyway. And most of them probably did.
Yeah.
There was a lot of pretend. There was a lot of fan kayfabe when it came to hating WWF.
Yeah.
WCW always got the bad.
Like
course,
Chad's
of course.
burning the Raw shirt.
North and South, man.
it's-
Yeah. But there was more reason to hate it now because now you had the WWF guys that you hated in WCW too. So now you hated this other company that you grew up being told not to like as a kid by the WWF, and you also had like the WWF guys that you didn't like because you were too cool back in the 80s, like Hogan and Savage and Piper, and now they're old too. So there's a ton of stuff to hate WCW
Yeah.
for in a not a kayfabe.
So
way, in a
basically, TNA isn't even big enough to be hated right now.
No.
WWF never even
needs to-
acknowledges it.
See if they were gonna stay in there, MGM Arena or whatever. They need to be live. That's number one. And also another great thing about the Monday Night Wars is when there was a switch, it always meant something. When WCW guy would come to WWF, the way they debuted was something unique, like Big Show, like Jericho, the Radicals, for example. Look how they brought in Monty Brown. Here's this guy. Let's give him another name.
Now, granted,
That's
he got a small TNA chant. Small.
Small.
It wasn't nearly as overwhelming as like an ECW sort of thing.
It's like the guy with the
Yeah.
Hawaiian shirt. We know, that's more for the fans to be cool, thinking they're cool, than it is to get TNA over.
But it also
we
wasn't,
know what this is.
It also
We know
wasn't a
what this
thing where
is.
he shows up out of the crowd and it's a huge thing.
They
Like the
could
Monday-
have made it big.
Well, they could have. But they didn't
obviously
even
it's
bother.
not
If
gonna be
Jim Ross
something
goes,
like DDP
oh my
taking
God,
up.
it's Monty Brown.
They need to
bottom line,
have something equivalent to DDP taking
if
up
the
the mask.
Titantron one day, if Cena's in the ring and the lights go out and it just says Samoa Joe, the place will
Yeah,
come unglued because enough people will know who that is. Everybody knows who that is.
So Joe goes
They've got
beyond
one guy.
TNA.
Oh yeah, totally. He
Yeah.
goes way beyond TNA. And it's funny because they kind of made him a star. ROH kind of
But again,
created
I think
him,
it's a-
and then TNA said, "Oh, now we can do this on national level." So really, ROH made him a star.
They
But
really just did
TNA
everything ROH
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
with
okay,
Joe.
yeah,
And
okay, I
TNA
get that.
now has a chance to pull the trigger.
They
Even
got a
though
guy.
they missed their opportunity.
But they ain't
missed
gonna
it a few
do
times.
it with. The problem is he's too big for them.
He's
No, he
beyond
could.
He's
that.
beyond that. If he wins
could
their
be
title,
bigger.
it's like, so
He could.
what?
Yeah, you know what? He could have.
Samoa Joe is home on Raw. That's where he
I don't-
will
I-
benefit
you know what,
wrestling
I-
the best.
I don't
I hate
see
to
it.
say it, but that's where
I
he
don't
should
see
be.
it.
Because he helps them.
What's the
Because he
alternative?
helps them change their whole dynamic with the whole Benoit thing. Here's a guy who doesn't have a great physique who's over because of his ability, personality, charisma. You put him right in there with any of their guys, he'll have a great match. And the fans love
He's
him
got
no
the
matter
it factor.
what. He's
we
got
know that.
it.
But
He's
how do you not see him on Monday night?
They fucked up enough guys where I really don't trust them. The only person
But
I
is it
trust.
but is it better to stay in TNA and have nothing happen, or do what Monty Brown thought? I'll take my chances elsewhere.
You should wait at least another 2
Samoa
years.
Joe is the type
He
of
has
guy.
no
Wait another
choice.
2 years.
Samoa Joe is a type
He has
of
no
guy.
choice. His
and I-
contract is up for 2 years.
He could squander in the WWF mid-card and get pushed all wrong for like 3 years and still, because he's got that sort of charisma. There's something about that guy that people really dig.
I mean, it's-
Eddie
yeah.
squandered in the mid-card of WWF. Get face heel, up, down, this, that, and then finally they succumb and he was a huge star. Joe's that sort of star. Austin, there's so many guys like that. Even Hogan,
But
back and forth
I
and
think
back
they
and
look
forth.
at Joe. Joe's
They could ruin him and then
physique,
still say
and
that.
because TNA is on such a small scale,
They push
where-
Umaga.
But they dress him up
Umaga
in
is
clown
their
makeup.
Yeah,
guy.
that's true. He's not
it's
like
their
big
guy.
tough guy, you know.
But
Big tough guy has to look like Batista to be big
whether
tough guy.
anything happens
Oh, I
in the
would kill to
future,
see
whether
Joe.
it's not TNA or somebody else, how do you see the brand split factoring in there? Because they've kept this bullshit up for years. SmackDown, Raw, ECW.
Well,
is that like
totally.
their heavy guns against any sort of competition?
No.
You don't think it's
Because
going to be
no,
a
Could
because
have been.
the Raw is their flag bearer. So
Still.
no matter what, you wouldn't have Jericho.
But
debuting
SmackDown does have a
SmackDown.
big audience.
It's
That's
a
big
network
audience.
show.
But-
kind of.
Again, Raw is their baby. They're gonna do something. They're gonna do it on Raw.
Mm-hmm.
Raw's their live show. Raw's their brings in the rating.
Yeah,
Raw's their
yeah.
moneymaker.
Rest of-
You know, no matter what they have, it's always all about Raw.
You think they'll ever end the brand split?
No, they don't
No.
have a reason
I don't
to.
think so.
Because
Yeah,
there's
right
no-
now they don't have a
I mean,
reason.
they're not making money or losing money off of it. It's just something that they decided. If we give this up, we admit that we screwed up the whole invasion, which everyone knows anyway. So,
Yeah.
but it's working out for them in a way because they can create synthetic,
Like
dream matches.
Like how they
can do
kept
that.
Angle and Michaels apart for so long,
I mean,
and then had
the
their
bad part about it is obviously the
cross-promotional
3
match.
championships dilutes the belts, but I think it works on a general level. People like the idea of Punk's on SmackDown this week. It creates a general buzz.
Yeah, and
I think it's
Rey
ridiculous.
Mysterio's gonna be on Raw.
Yeah, what the hell?
Spike the
Well,
ratings a little bit.
I don't even
Speaking
see the reason
of
they
all
had
their
to.
different brands, that's going to lead us into next time.
Brands.
Because there's talk of them making all these different brands in different countries and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
next time, we're going to be talking about whether American fans can get into foreign wrestlers and vice versa. So, hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time.